Hey friends, we just got the Commander banned and restricted announcement today, and we got some Commander unbans. No bannings, just some unbans. Gifts Ungiven, Sway of the Stars, Braid's Cabal Minion, and Coalition Victory, and Panoptic Mirror have all been unbanned, which is actually kind of funny because we just got a podcast talking about our predictions for this ban announcement that just went up literally an hour ago before this recording, and we actually all agreed on 4 of these cards, which is kind of cool. So go watch that if you want to see our predictions, see us being vindicated, basically. So that's kind of cool. We're going to be talking about that, and then we also have an update to the Commander bracket system. So they're not changing anything fundamental about the bracket system. However, they're removing a couple cards from the Game Changer list, and they're adding a whole bunch of cards. I believe 18 cards have been added to the Game Changer list. So we're going to talk about that. But first, let's talk about the unbanned cards. So we're going to go through each one, and then I'm going to give my thoughts on it and also their official reasoning. So the first one, Gifts Ungiven. It's a 4-mana blue instant that says search your library for up to 4 cards of different names and reveal them. Target opponent chooses 2 of those cards. Put the chosen cards into your graveyard and the rest into your hand, then shuffle. So Gifts Ungiven is a very classic old school card. I believe it saw tournament play back in the day, and it's like a cool version of Fact or Fiction meets Entomb, really. So the trick about this card is that what you could do is you can tutor up 4 cards at instant speed, and it doesn't matter which ones they are if you have all 4 redundant effects, or you have 2 cards that you want and then 2 cards that can reanimate the things that you want if you put them into the graveyard instead. That's the fair way of doing it. However, the other cheeky way of using this is the card says search your library for up to 4 cards, and then your opponent chooses 2 to put into the graveyard. So what you could do, you don't have to look up 4 cards, you could just look up 2 cards, and then your opponents are forced to put those 2 cards into your graveyard. And in that sense, Gifts Ungiven just 4-mana instant speed blue double Entomb, right? You just tutor up 2 specific cards that you want, and they go immediately into your graveyard, and your opponents don't have really a say in the matter. So the card is really, really powerful. It's instant speed tutoring in a 99-card singleton format. That's always going to be very, very good. And it's very iconic. So the reason why they unbanned it is it's a beloved card. People were afraid of its nature as a powerful tutor, and it's also being time intensive because you have to look up 4 different cards and stuff. And also it's a combo enabler, obviously. Tutors are very good at enabling combos, right? That's kind of the main draw of playing tutors. However, they decided to unban it because they say it's a very fun card. It's similar to Fact or Fiction, so there's cool politics if you use it that way. And also, as the Commander format has progressed, and we're getting better at figuring out what type of games we want for pregame conversations, and I'm sure the bracket systems have helping facilitate that at higher levels, where you're okay with combos, cards that kind of enable combos like Gifts Ungiven are going to be more okay at those tables. So it's not straight up banned. Instead, it's a game changer. So at higher brackets, which is brackets 3 and 4 where game changers are allowed, Gifts Ungiven can now show up. And because, it helps enable combo decks, and combo decks are allowed at brackets 3 and 4, this is fine there. And personally speaking, I totally agree with this assessment. I think if you don't want combos to easily happen in your games, then banning the most powerful tutors are definitely a way of making sure that those combos happen less often, less consistently. However, now that we kind of have a better system of figuring out what type of Commander games we're signing up for, and if you are signing up for combo games and tutor-heavy games, Gifts Ungiven I don't think is so much stronger than the other tutors that are currently unbanned, that it's worth keeping just straight up banned from the format. So I think this is a good change. The next card that got unbanned, Sway of the Stars, is not showing up in their article, so don't worry. Editor Me will have it pop up on the side. And essentially, I believe off the top of my head, it's like 10 mana, like 8 double blue sorcery that just resets the game. You shuffle all the cards, all the permanents on the battlefield, everything on the battlefield, everything in your hand, everything in your graveyard, everything in your library, everything gets shuffled up, and you get a new 7 card. Everybody gets a new 7 cards, and everybody's life total goes to 7. So it's like a hard reset to the game, and you're like essentially starting from scratch. That's kind of not super fun to do if you're like in like a 2-hour game of Commander, somebody casts a spell and be like, hey guys, let's just start the game over again. That kind of sucks sometimes. However, the reason why they unbanned it is basically previously, I think it's like 2 years ago at this point, they unbanned a card that's very similar to it, Worldfire, which is arguably even worse, because you don't get a new 7 cards, you just lose your entire hand, and everybody's at 1 instead of 7. In some ways, Worldfire is worse, because if you have no way of actually finishing the game at that point, people are just like in top deck mode, hoping they hit lands, hoping that they can eventually cast a spell and hopefully end the game sooner rather than later. And in some ways, Worldfire is better in winning the game. Like if you're playing a Joyer of the Gitu deck, for example, one of the classic lines way back in the day when I started playing, which was 2011, was the Joyer player would suspend Worldfire and then suspend something that will win the game immediately afterwards. It typically would be like Eldrazi Titans. So you'd like Worldfire, suspend Worldfire, suspend an Eldrazi Titan. Eventually the Worldfire would be cast first. It would come off suspension first. Everybody would go down to 1, lose everything they have on board and in hand, and then your Eldrazi Titan would then come into play afterwards and then just kill everybody unopposed. So Worldfire in that regard can be used as a very successful and evil way of winning the game, but for most part, just casting Worldfire kind of sucks if there's no way to actually finish the game afterwards. Same thing with Sway of the Stars. However, the reason why they unbanned it is they unbanned Worldfire and like nothing happened. It's not an appealing card to casual players, and it's also not a powerful card. We have so many better ways of ending the game than trying to Worldfire or Sway of the Stars. So it doesn't have an appeal. So it's not very popular. People just don't play it. And it's not very powerful, so you don't see it at high level tables. So you just don't see this card. So yeah, even though a lot of people might not enjoy it, it's just not very good. And Sway of the Stars is basically the same thing. So people are guessing that it will see very little play, but the people who do enjoy those type of cards, Worldfire and Sway of the Stars, if they manage to wrangle up 3 other people or whatever, an actual pod that also is okay with dealing with Sway of the Stars or Worldfire or whatever, they can now play with that. It's not straight up banned. It's a game changer. So I think this is another excellent unbanning. It makes a lot of sense. We saw the Worldfire did absolutely nothing in terms of impact to the format. You hardly ever see it, but it is nice that, you know, some people who want to play with these type of cards can now have at least an opportunity to do so. Speaking of cards people do not enjoy very much, the card that I'm most excited to see unbanned finally is Braid's Cabal Minion. It's a 4-mana black 2/2 legendary creature human minion, and at the beginning of each player's upkeep, that player sacrifices an artifact, creature, or land. So Braid's is an iconic, very nostalgic stacks piece. It's one of like the coolest old school stacks pieces we have. It just makes everybody lose resources, and the trick here is to find a way to break the symmetry of that stacks. Like if you have an incremental token maker like Bitter Blossom, for example, on the battlefield, Braids' ability is nullified against you because you're always going to be sacrificing a token every single turn, whereas your opponents are probably going to be hopefully sacrificing something more notable, lands, creatures that they've paid mana for rather. Whatever. So obviously, stacks, resource denial, people don't enjoy in Commander or casual Commander as a general rule. And actually, way back in the day in Elder Dragon Highlander, Braids was initially not fully banned in Commander. It was banned as Commander. It was there was a special rule back in the day where there was cards that were just straight up banned in the format, like we have now. But then there was also another special rule called banned as Commander, where certain legendary creatures were allowed in the 99, however, they weren't allowed in the command zone. Braids was one of these cards. And when they removed that rule, they just straight up banned Braids entirely. And the reason why they unbanned it is it's a beloved character, and it's frustrating to people who get locked out. Obviously, it's a stacks piece. However, power creep has essentially, hit Commander quite hard since it got banned in 2009. So not only are people better equipped to deal with an early braids or whatever a braids lock, removal has gotten better, and people have gotten better at identifying the braids as a threat that needs to get removed, and also at identifying what type of games they want to have in Commander. Just like Sway of the Stars, you can just choose to say, hey, I don't want to play against a hardcore stacks deck, and that's totally fine. So yeah, power creep is a large factor as why they are unbanning braids, and also the fact that it's just easier dealt with, both in the game with just, you hold up a removal spell and then braids dies and that's it, or just avoiding it. And I think this is a very good unban as well. I've long championed having braids unbanned in Commander, and my reasoning is pretty simple and I believe very consistent. The only cards I would like to see banned in Commander are ones that, first of all, have a net negative gameplay experience for your average casual commander, which braids, I would say, fits in that category. But the second factor, and a very important factor, is ubiquity. How often you would actually see these type of cards played at your local game store, at your F&M, at your whatever. And what we've seen over a decade of Commander at this point is that casual players do not end up finding stacks cards very pop. For example, Armageddon, classic, iconic stacks card, right? It's mass land destruction. A lot of people would not enjoy playing against it, I would say. The average Commander player would not want to play against an Armageddon effect. However, how often do you actually see Armageddon being cast at your average Commander game, at your F&M, at your LGS? Almost never, because casual players just don't like the Armageddon effect. It's been power crept a lot in the format, and more importantly, it's just not an effect casual commanders typically enjoy. I think casual commanders enjoy things that give them card advantage, give them mana advantage, give them big, huge beaters on the battlefield, and allow them to dirtle. These are factors that casual commanders really enjoy. It's things that promote battle cruiser magic, and stuff like Armageddon and other stacked pieces like braids just are not very appealing. So even if they are unbanned, like Armageddon, for example, has never been banned, they're just not a problem in Commander because they're just not very popular. Just like the World Fires and the Sway of the Stars. And I would argue the same thing will go with braids. And the reason why I know it's going to be absolutely fine is we've had a Braids 2.0 in the format for quite a while now. That's Turgid. Turgid, I would argue, is even stronger than braids. It can seal the game much easier than braids. And yet it's never been an issue in the format as a whole because casual players just don't really enjoy Braids' playstyle that much, and everybody understands that this is a stacks piece, and therefore are able to avoid playing against it when a Turgid player does show up. So you could play Turgid if you can find a group of people who want to play against Turgid, want to have that experience. And I'm not saying this as a diehard Turgid player, diehard stacks player or whatever. I'm just saying that I don't think they are worth a ban slot because I think the Commander community has dealt with these type of commanders like Turgid and Toxrill and similar type of stacksy commanders very well. It's not an issue in the format. And so I think Braids is a very safe unbanning. If you don't want to play a stack style game, you could just say, hey, I don't want to play against your Braids deck. That's it. Another card I don't care about ever playing. I think none of these cards I care about playing, by the way. But another card that is a long time coming, in my opinion, is Coalition Victory. Another card. They just don't have the card images here. I don't know why. I have to bring it up. Okay, Coalition Victory. It's an 8 mana sorcery. It's 3 in Wooburg. You win the game if you control a land of each basic land type and a creature of each color. So essentially, if you have like a 5-color creature on the battlefield, like your commander, for example, and like a Triome and a Shock land, or like 2 Triomes or whatever, you can cast Coalition Victory for 8 mana, 3 in Wooburg, and if your opponents don't do anything with those Trimes on the battlefield and the creature on the battlefield, you just win the game. So it was initially banned for being very anticlimactic, right? Like, you just kind of win out of nowhere. It doesn't really matter what the rest of the board say what's doing. The game is just over because I spent 8 mana and I won the game because I have a 5-color commander and I have like 2 Triumphs out on the battlefield or whatever. Not a very exciting way of winning the game in Commander, right? And the article obviously echoes that. We're talking about how impactful and an auto-include it is in a 5-color commander. It will just win the game if you control a commander and like some random lands in your 5-color pile, right? Not very satisfying, very anticlimactic. A lot of people will not be very happy with how the game ended due to that. However, the reason why they unbanned it is because it actually can be interacted with. It's not just an automatically I win the game when you cast 8 mana, because if you only have a 5-color creature out on the battlefield, a single removal spell just makes an entire 8 mana spell fizzle, right? You just like Swords of Plowshares in response to Coalition Victory. The 5-color commander is gone, and the 8 mana spell just completely fizzled. It does literally nothing. So yes, it is going to lead to some very unsatisfying wins. However, I think it's also just coming down to power creep. Whenever Coalition Victory was banned, I don't even know when it was banned, there was probably less ways of winning the game automatically for 8 mana. But nowadays, like, if you're in a 5-color deck and you jump through those hoops and you cast an 8 mana spell, hopefully that wins you the game, right? Like, that should be fine these days. So yeah, this is another card that, like, yeah, I'm personally never going to be playing it. I don't find that sort of victory satisfying, but I also don't think it's worth banning. Some people are going to win off of this, and that's totally fine. There's a lot of different ways people win that I find not super satisfying, you know? Like, if you ask Crim, for example, he thinks like looping Gary a bunch of times in a mono black deck is very unsatisfying. So there's just different strokes for different folks, and I don't think this card is particularly super powerful that it warrants banning either. And overall, I think this is another type of card that is going to self-regulate very often. Like, I just don't think a lot of people are going to be super excited casting Coalition Victory more than once. Like, you do it once, you're like, I did it, and then you probably take it out of your deck, I assume. But yeah, we'll see how it goes. All right, another card that they failed to add an image of in the article, Panoptic Mirror. Let's look it up. All right, Panoptic Mirror, it's a 5-mana colorless artifact. It has Imprint, X, and tap it. You may exile an instant or sorcery card with mana value X from your hand, and at the beginning of your upkeep, you may copy a card exiled with this artifact. If you do, you may cast a copy without paying its mana cost. So Panoptic Mirror could be a sweet value engine, right? You get to cast a spell for free over and over again every single turn, which is nice. However, the reason why I got banned is that the moment you put an extra turn spell on Panoptic Mirror, the game is over. You just take infinite turns, right? Like, as soon as your upkeep. So yeah, extra turns obviously break it. It's an infinite. But the thing is that 2025 power creep has happened, and Panoptic Mirror winning with infinite turns with Panoptic Mirror is just not that scary anymore. There's much easier, much more mana efficient ways of taking infinite turns than having a Panoptic Mirror, paying 5 mana to exile a Time Warp from your hand, and then waiting into your entire upkeep, waiting an entire turn cycle to your upkeep before you actually manage to win the game off it. So I think this is a very safe unban. If you want to take extra infinite turns, you could do it already much easier than Panoptic Mirror. So while again, winning with Panoptic Mirror infinite turns is not something that personally excites me, I just think that it's just power crept out that it's a very safe unban. And then the final ban announcement, they say Dockside Extortionist, Jewel Lotus, and Mana Crypt, they're not unbanning these cards yet. They're just thinking about it a little bit longer. They said if of any of these, Jewel Lotus is probably the one that's most likely to get unbanned, but like they're waiting to see how the bracket system shakes out and they're seeing if they even want to do it at all. Personally speaking, I never want to see Dockside, Jewel Lotus, and Mana Crypt ever unbanned. I think fast mana is just awful in Commander. I think it just is a net negative to the health of the game. It makes the gameplay experience just worse when somebody shoots out way, way ahead of the rest of the table just due to a coin flip, essentially. And I'm really happy that they got unbanned, and I don't see any value of unbanning them now. I understood the value of not banning them in the first place just because of monetary reasons, not gameplay reasons. But the fact that like it's already been done, I see there's no gameplay reason to unban these things. I think it's straight up a net negative. I guess, opinions will vary on that, but I think it's a pretty easy choice for me, at least. But yeah, so yeah, I'm happy that those things again unbanned. I was very anxious about this ban list just because of these cards. Honestly, everything else is just like a bonus, but I was very scared about the Dockside, Jewel Lotus, and Mana Crypt being unbanned. I think it would be wrong for various reasons. First, the gameplay I think is just bad. It sets a bad precedent that like fast mana it's okay, and I think it's like clearly a design mistake. All three of these cards were design mistakes, and then another really important factor is the fact that like the people who banned these cards initially received so many death threats that they left the rules committee and WotC took over. I think that would set a bad precedent in the future too, to say like, hey, if you send death threats, we'll unban cards that you're unhappy with being banned. Obviously, I don't think the ban list should be curated based on which things warranted death threats or not. I think first and foremost, I think these cards are just bad for the format. However, that's just something else to acknowledge as well too. But yeah, so overall, very happy with these unbans. I'm glad that they didn't do anything crazy like unban the Docksides and Jewel Lotuses. And also, no prime times were unbanned or anything like that. I thought that would have been crazy. Overall, super happy with that. And now we're going to look at the Commander bracket system. So first and foremost, they're not changing anything about the bones of the bracket system. They're not adding a new bracket. It's still 1 to 4. They're not changing the definitions or anything of any of the brackets. They mentioned at the beginning that it's so far being very well received by the public. And that's something I'm really happy about. I think this is a net positive for pre-game conversations, for making sure people find games that they're interested in and get everybody on the same page when looking up for pickup games. I do not think the bracket system is that useful for anybody who has a personal play group. Like if you play games with the same people over and over again, you figure out naturally what everybody is looking to play and what type of game experience everybody wants to share together. And obviously the bracket system was never intended for people with regular play groups who already have a very well functioning group and meta already. This is always intended for pickup games, for your LGS and everything. And I think it's a great addition there. So I'm super happy that, people are adopting it and people are happy with how it's doing. And yeah, I'm really happy about that. But now we will talk about the Game Changer delistings. So they removed 2 cards from the Game Changer list, Trouble in Pairs and Trinisphere. Trouble in Pairs, they say it can draw a lot of cards, but it's on par with some cards that are not on the list. Citation needed. Yeah, I think this is a weird one to unban. I know some people are like, just because it's in white, it's not. The only reason why it's like even an issue is because white's doing it, and if it was any other color, it would be totally fine. I totally disagree with this. This card is absolutely nutty in terms of a card draw engine. I've seen it on Commander Clash, like it draws like, on average, at least 1 per person's turn, so at least 4 in a turn cycle, but usually a lot more than that, honestly. It's like usually drawing between like 4 to like 6, 7 cards in a single turn cycle for 4 mana without any synergy, without any no hoops to jump through, just existing. You paid a 4 mana enchantment on the battlefield and you get to draw like 4+ cards every single turn cycle. Seems like a very bad thing to have in Commander, but I guess enough people disagreed with that it got removed from the Game Changer list. And you know what? I'm okay with that because I'm very happy with the unbannings and the fact that they didn't unban the stuff that I was very scared about. So I'll take this L. It's fine. And then Trinisphere, I have no strong feelings about this one, but they're like, it's a stacks card, but it's not like a super hard stacks card. So it's fine to play at higher brackets, and that's cool with me. Yeah, sure, whatever. I don't really care. I don't expect to see people run Trinisphere very much, even though it's not a game changer anymore. Like I said, I don't think casual players are interested in cards that are hard stacks that don't give you anything in return, right? Like, for example, I don't think anybody really plays Torpor Orb that much at Casual Commander. The only reason why people would play a Torpor Orb is if it's stapled to a Panharmonicon, like the new Elish Norn, for example. Elish Norn is very popular, people like playing it, but only because they like the Panharmonicon effect. The Torpor Orb effect is just a little bit of a bonus. So Trinisphere, it can go off the game changer list, and I don't think I'm going to see it much, if at all, at my LGS, at my FNM, or whatever. So I don't care about this as a change. And then the rest, there's a lot of cards. There's a lot of cards. We're going to go briefly over all of them, but it's 18 cards that they're adding to the Game Changer list. All right, so first we got T-Pro, and I'm very happy this one's here. Obviously, T-Pro is just so much better. It's leagues better than any other sort of protection spell in the format, in my opinion. It's not just like a heroic intervention because it phases out, so it dodges like Psych Rift, it dodges Farewells, it dodges anything. And it's not just like a fog effect where it protects your life total because your life total can't change, so you can't be even drained out by a Blood Artifact. It's not just that it's better than those things. It's better than those things times infinity, because it lasts not until the end of the turn, it lasts until the start of your next turn. So even if you like pass a turn, then your next opponent tries to kill you with lethal, and you T-Pro out of there. It's not like the next opponent's turn can do anything about it to you. You have immunity until the start of your next turn, and a full turn cycle of immunity, and that's compared to anything else that's a protection spell, which is almost always end of turn. T-Pro is just stupid. It's just dumb. It's a dumb card. I'm very glad that it's a game changer. It's acknowledged being dumb. The next card, Humility. We don't have the image for it. I'm going to put it, Tomer editor will put it over here. 4-mana enchantment. All creatures are just 1/1 vanillas. Yeah, it's a hard stacks card. It was kind of weird that it wasn't a game changer before because it doesn't like slot into like the MLD categories or whatever. So it's good that it's not here. It just slows games down to a crawl. A lot of casual people don't like it. It's good to notify it as a game changer, even though I don't think it was played much before. I don't think it's going to be played much afterwards. Who really cares? Whatever. This is a kind of important one because I see these cards see a decent amount of play. Card draw denial cards. Narset, Part of Veils, Orcish Bowmaster, and Notion Thief. Of these, I think Narset, Part of the Veils, and Notion Thief see some amount of play. They just stop your opponents from drawing extra cards, and they're quite annoying. Orcish Bowmaster does not stop your opponents from drawing extra cards, but they're arguably even stronger because they just do insane amounts of damage and make huge beaters and are just 2 mana. So yeah. I think the main problem with all these cards is that they're very, very strong with wheel effects. When you can force your opponent to discard their hands and then draw 7 with like a Wheel of Fortune or a Windfall or anything like that, then these cards feel incredibly unfair because they essentially just strip your opponent's hands of all the cards in their hands, and then they don't get to play Magic anymore. And in that sense, I don't really like how these cards are worded. I really wish we had card draw effects that allowed us to just punish our opponents for drawing a lot of cards and not being able to force them to lose their hand and draw those cards with wheel effects and punish them that way. So I would actually kind of like to see new versions of these type of cards that maybe aren't as effective as these cards and aren't as hard stacksy as the cards are, but also just don't work well with wheel effects. I'm not going to shed a tear of these cards. I don't really play them that much. But I do think, in general, Wizards of the Coast designers should be keeping in mind that card draw is getting better and better, and we don't really have that many ways of combating that. You know, like we have removal spells for creatures and permanents galore, but we don't have a lot of ways of just stopping our opponents from drawing infinite amounts of cards with impunity. So that's something that I would like to see in the future, at least. Then we got a card that I thought was a game changer already. It's Intuition. I think I mentioned it as a game changer, but apparently not. It's 3 mana, blue instant. Search your library for 3 cards and reveal them. Target opponent choose 1. Put that card into your hand and the rest into your graveyard, then shuffle your library. it's kind of like a gift and given. That's like the closest analog for it, where you have to choose 3 cards this time. You can't just choose up to 3. But your opponents get to put 1 into your hand and then the rest into your graveyard. And it's basically a very good combo card. You're going to be setting up situations where no matter what your opponent picks, you're going to get back the things in the graveyard immediately afterwards with like Eternal Witnesses or whatever. And then it's just like a super tutor at instant speed in blue, which is really, really good. So I think it's worth being a game changer. It's kind of a no-brainer over here. If they're focusing on tutors specifically, like the best tutors specifically as game changers, which they already did, I think Intuition fits that role very well. Consecrated Sphinx is an interesting one for me too. I don't see that card played that much, but I do acknowledge it's incredibly powerful. 6 mana blue, 4/6 Sphinx flying. Whenever an opponent draws a card, you may draw 2 cards. It is a must-kill threat at tables. I totally agree with the article. And it draws a ton of cards very, very quickly. And then, yeah, if somebody copies it, then those 2 people are just drawing their entire libraries very consistently, and the other 2 people are unfortunately left out of the fun. Yeah, it's a very powerful card. I guess maybe it's a little bit underplayed because I don't really see it played that often. I'm not quite sure why. It is a very fun card too, so I would think it would be popular amongst casual players. Maybe it's just my own play groups. We don't see it that much, but yeah, I can see it as being a standout and being a game changer. I think that's totally fine. But I mean, I know some of the Goldfish crew are kind of confused about this one, but I think it's okay. Necropotence, yeah, we were memeing on this one not being a game changer before, but ad nauseum is. It really made the game changer list just be like CDH cards and nothing else really. But Necropotence, even though it's not as good as Adnaz at CDH tables, I think at non-CDH tables where your mana curve isn't like stopping at 1, Necropotence is actually very, very strong, and arguably stronger than Adnaz. So I think this makes a lot of sense for it to be finally a game changer. It's one of the most busted card draw engines in casual play, and again, just no build around or anything. You just draw cards without jumping in through any hoops. All right, next, Deflecting Swat has made it as a game changer. They say that free strong counter magic has made the list previously, and this often does a job of free counter magic and more. I'm kind of mixed opinions on this one. It is a very powerful card, but I don't think it's quite on the same level as Fierce Guardianship. I don't think like anybody would say, oh, it's like, you know, the level is fierce. Like, it's very, very powerful in very narrow situations where, you know, something's getting targeted and you want it redirected. Like, if somebody sorts the Plowshare as your commander for free, you can redirect it to their commander, and then you have a 2-for-1, and then it's better than a counterspell. But, you know, Deflecting Swat does nothing to, let's say, a board wipe, you know? So it's very useful in certain regards, and it's very useless in certain other regards. That said, I think it's probably still worth putting on the game changer list. I think all of the cycle, except for like maybe the fog, is probably too much. I just don't like them as game designs. So I'm kind of okay just like putting them all on the game changer list, to be honest. Yeah, that's fine. Then we got some more tutors. So they do want to cut down or clamp down on tutors in general, and they focus on the most mana efficient ones as the outliers. So they have Mystical Tutor and like Imperial Seal and Vampire Tutor and Lighten Tutor already as 1 mana tutors that are, you know, fairly flexible on the game changer list. And I remember we were talking about it on the podcast, like, how the heck did green get away with it? You know, like, where are the green tutors? It's very, very, very odd to us. Like, you know, Mystical Tutor and Lighten Tutor are in the same cycle as Worldly Tutor, and Worldly Tutor is just as flexible as the other ones, and yet Worldly Tutor isn't there. Well, they corrected it over here, and they put in Worldly Tutor. They also put in Crop Rotation, thank goodness. You know, just it is an incredibly efficient tutor, just as good as the other ones. Gamble is also very, very good. So yeah, it's just some consistency here. If they put like Mystical Tutor and Enlightened Tutor on the Game Changer list, where the heck were the green ones? So yeah, it's good. It's good that they're here. Seedborn Muse. Seedborn Muse, interesting choice here. Essentially, just it says like if you have any ways of like spending your mana at some speed, your opponent's turns become your turns as well, and you just start eating up the table's collective game time, which is not great in casual Commander. People like having an equal amount of opportunity to play the game, and once you're eating up everybody else's time, that's not super cool. And yeah, that's the reason why they put it as a game changer. It says it causes one player to take a disproportionate amount of time in the game, and it just gives you like a lot of extra abilities in a turn if properly built around. Obviously, you can't just like jam Seedborn Muse in a random green deck and hope to get maximum value around it. You have to build around it properly. But when you do build around them properly, you're taking everybody's turn, essentially. It's also featured in the Abzan Armor Precon in Tarkir Dragonstorm, which is a little bit awkward. A lot of people have been pointing it out. But just keep in mind, these precons have been made 2 years in advance, right? They work 2 years in advance. And I don't think they have to be beholden to cards that are in precons to like not touching the cards in there. For example, the very first Commander deck that I ever owned when I got into Commander in 2011 was Political Puppets, and Political Puppets had a card that's now banned, Trade Secrets, and they actually banned it not much after the precon came out, I believe. So yeah, it happens. I don't think anybody was too sour about it. I think that was a good call to ban. And yeah, it sucks that's a precon and now it's a game changer, but it's not banned. It's just a game changer. It's not banned. It's not like your precon's illegal or anything. It's just that it's a little bit awkward if you're like in a bracket 2 game and you're like, oh, this is a game changer card. But again, as they mention here, just because you have a game changer in your deck, that doesn't mean suddenly your deck is not whatever bracket. Like, precons are generally speaking bracket 2, and if you have a stock list and it happens to have a card that is a game changer, it doesn't suddenly make it a bracket 3 deck or whatever. It's more about the intent of the deck itself. That's the primary focus over here. So I think people are getting worked up over nothing. It is kind of a haha funny moment, but like it's not anything more than that. Then we got Natural Order. Again, green got some tutors on the game changer list. Thank God. So it's one of the strongest ways to cheat out big creatures with Natural Order. It makes a lot of sense. It's very easy to include over here. Food Chain is just a combo card. I don't think anybody has ever played it fairly in Commander, and it's a 2-card infinite combo. So I think it was already like, if you do combo fit, it was already kind of covered in like bracket 3, that it's not usually not okay as a 2-card combo. But now they just made it double sure for everybody that it's a game changer, and I have no strong opinions on this one, honestly. Aura Shards. Aura Shards. I know a lot of people in Commander Clash do not like Aura Shards. I'm thinking about Seth and Phil in particular, especially Phil. It's very, very backbreaking, right? Like if you're in a creature heavy deck or a token heavy deck or whatever, being able to machine gun down all opposing artifacts and enchantments and basically locking them out until Aura Shards is removed can feel bad. And I totally get that. I think it's a pretty fair card. Definitely not ban worthy or anything, but you put it on the game changer list, fine, I guess. I don't think it's game changer worthy, but I'm also not heartbroken for it to be a game changer. But oh my God, this one I'm very happy about. Finally, Wizard of the Coast, like I think Wizard of the Coast has finally acknowledged that utility lands, especially the most powerful ones, are kind of an issue in Commander because we don't have the tools to deal with them. and then green got hit a little bit hit hard too. So I'm guessing, hi Gavin, if you're watching this, I know that like game designers do listen to our podcast and stuff. So maybe we had an influence over here, but finally, thank God, Feel the Dead is acknowledged for being kind of a broken card. Utility lands in general are just really powerful in Commander because we have so many powerful ways of tutoring them up whenever we want to, especially in green, most definitely in green, and we just don't have the tools to really deal with them in Commander because we have some like spot removal for for utility lands, but they're few and far between. And lands are so easily recurred as well that it's kind of a two-pronged issue. And we don't have access to really good tools of actually dealing with really powerful utility lands. I feel that then is just too strong. It's a very busted card. It's just always been a busted card, and it's especially problematic in Commander because we just don't have the tools to additionally combat it. So it's very good. This is actually a game changer. And then the last card, this is a card that I called out, and I know not much of the rest of the Goldfish crew thought it was an issue, but like I thought it was kind of really silly that Mishra's Workshop, they put like Ancient Tomb, and they mentioned like fast mana as an issue and everything, but like Mishra's Workshop, just a random land that's incredibly expensive. It's on the reserve list, like $3,000 or something like that. It just taps for 3 mana. So one lane, I'm just about to untap test for 3 mana for artifacts. It's ridiculous. It's a ridiculously powerful card. So it just feels very inconsistent not to have it on the Game Changer list, even though it's like absolutely busted. And similar cards are on the Game Changer list. So for the sake of consistency, I'm glad that it's here. I don't think anybody will be too opposed to it there, honestly. It's an easy one here too. Okay, so those were all the new game changers. Then the cards that weren't changed. There's a lot to talk about, so I'm not going to talk. But basically, they had a discussion about adding more commanders onto the game changer list because, like, Yuriko, for example, is a very powerful commander that, is a little bit too busted. It's very popular and very powerful, and it's a bit busted. So they put it as a game changer. And then the question is, there's other really powerful and busted commanders that are very popular, like Korvald, Edgar, Ur-Dragon, Joda, Atraxa, and blah, blah. So why aren't those also on the game changer list? And I guess the answer is, if we start putting all the popular, powerful commanders on the game changer list, we're going to blanket bang like the top 20 on EDH Rec, and that might not look good. So the current leading idea for Gavin is that being a game changer isn't strictly about power for at least commanders. It has to be that the commanders lead to a bad gameplay experience. And so something like Turgid and Grand Arbiter, these it's not so much that they're very powerful. It's just that the gameplay experience is something that casual commanders don't like playing against, so therefore they are on the game changer list. And certain things like Eureka and Urza, which are game changers, they're solely about being too powerful. That's why they were initially game changers, and not because they yield bad gameplay experience. I don't really agree with this. I think if commanders are too powerful, then being too powerful, too oppressively strong, leads to bad gameplay experience, in my opinion. Like, if you show up against a Joder and like, oh god, literally nothing I do matters. I have to hold up all my removal spell, or else if Joder has a single turn to untap, I just lose the game immediately. I think that's a bad gameplay experience. Maybe I am in the minority, though. Who knows? But yeah, I think this is a tough spot to be in, even if you agree with me, because like, what are you going to do? There's obviously a correlation between powerful commanders and popular commanders, and no doubt about it. So what's the situation here? Or do we just ban like the top 100 EDH trick cards because Wizards of the Coast keeps printing overpowered commanders? I don't know. I don't think that's probably the way of solving it either. But yeah, it's a tough call here. And then there's other cards that they were talking about whether or not they should take them on the ban list or put them on the game changer list or take them off. Like Farewell should be a game changer or not, and they say no. Alms Collector, they put some game changer draw denial cards, but Alms Collector is just weaker. Mana Drain's not strong enough to be a game changer. And yeah, they just start talking about a bunch of them. It's too many cards, and the video is getting long enough, and Tomer needs to have dinner. So I'll let you read it. I have the article in the link below, in the video description below. But yeah, that's it for now, everybody. I just noticed that my video webcam stopped working at some point, which really sucks. So you won't be able to see my face over here, but hopefully you can still hear my lovely voice. But overall, I think these changes are very, very good. I think the unbans were very safe. I was initially terrified of what they would potentially unban. like Prime Time or like Dockside and stuff like that. And I'm very glad to see that they did not do that. They kept things pretty safe and solid. And I think overall, a lot of people will be happy with what they unbanned. The game changer list too, I pretty much agree with most of it. And again, obviously, I'm not going to agree with everything they change. Everybody has different opinions on what they like and dislike in Commander. So if you ask 15 Commander players what should be a game changer and what should be banned and unbanned, you'll get like 20 different opinions. But so if the fact that I agree with the vast majority of that makes me very happy. I'm not going to agree with everything, and I don't think anybody will agree with everything. So overall, I think they did it. I'm very happy with what they did overall. So yeah, I'm really excited about that. Also of note, they're not going to be banning or unbanning anything again for a year. They're going to take a year off to assess and see how the format's going and how brackets are going. And then next year, they're probably going to do more tweaks. So we're going to have like a year of like no more changes. We're going to be chilling. And yeah, I'm pretty happy. So let me know in the comment section what you think about all these changes. Any unbans you didn't like? Any game changer changes you did or didn't like? Let me know in the comment section. I want to hear everybody's thoughts. And until next time, friends, see ya.